I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday and it's time for The Fix. First up, we hear from Interim PIC Chair Dr. Reuel Khoza, now that the Commission of Inquiry has wrapped up its work into the largest investor on the JSE. I asked him whether Dr. Iqbal Survey's businesses invested in by the PIC will be liquidated and if Steinhoff executives will be brought to justice. We also get the response from public sector unions whose pensions are at stake. And as the clock ticks down to Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, who is expected to deliver his medium-term budget policy statement, we find out what various unions and trade organizations as well as NGOs expect the minister to prioritize in his policy statement. And as is custom, we take a look at what's made the headlines in the weekend newspapers and why. The Fix starts now. Welcome to this edition of The Fix, where every Sunday we hold the decision makers to account. We tell you why it matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. Now, the Commission of Inquiry into the PIC report is likely to be handed to President Cyril Ramaphosa on October the 31st. Its work resulted in the exposure of the rot at the heart of the management of the more than 2.2 trillion rand investment fund and the powerful business and political interests that have informed the allocation of loans and questionable investment decisions often made by PIC former boss, Mr. Dan Machila. To discuss this, I'm joined in the studio by the public sector union representatives, and of course we have Mr. Tahir Paima from the Public Sector, or rather Public Service Association, and we of course also have Kaya here from the largest public sector union, in fact, in Kusatu, the Nihao, and it's of course Mr. Kaya Xaba. Now, gentlemen, before I get your responses to this matter, let's take a listen to Dr. Reuel Khoza, the interim board chair, on the work done so far to safeguard public sector worker pension funds. I kicked off by asking him if the PIC will meet its deadline to give that report to the President at the end of the month.
We'll stick to the deadline insofar as we are required by regulation, but the board is already hard at work because we got there and discovered that in fact the organization was run by acting heads of the various departments. And no organization can work like that, particularly an organization as complex and as challenged as the PIC. So upon arrival, we looked at how best we could begin to revisit the MOI, how best we could actually look at the policies and the guidelines that could enable us to begin working. Our belief is that whatever the Lex Mpati Commission is going to discover, it's not going to deviate from best practice in governance. So what we're doing now is not likely to be affected unnecessarily drastically. But we have to respect the work of the Commission, and we will be guided in large measure with whatever it comes up with, which will merge with our understanding of governance.
Now, two of the companies that have caught the attention of the public during this period of the work of the Commission is, of course, Sekunjalo and AO Technologies, owned by Dr. Iqbal Survey, as well as Steinhoff, owned in part by Marcus Uester. And these have been the two institutions in which the PIC had invested. Let's start with Iqbal Survey. This Friday morning's Business Day spoke about the fact that BDO has now dumped Iqbal Survey's companies. They're saying they're no longer prepared to audit the books, and they're not going to renew their contract with AO Technologies, Africa Equity Empowerment Investments, Premier Fishing and Brands, and Independent Media. That's almost the entire portfolio of Dr. Survey's businesses. How significant is this move, given the fact that you've basically put Sekunjalo and AO Technologies under the microscope during the investigation?
this move, in a very substantial measure, actually vindicates what it is that the PIC has been complaining about. When we reported to the Standing Committee on Finance about some of the unsavory practices that appear to be surfacing, which thing was actually raised by one of the committee members. Iqbal survey descended on us like a ton of bricks. That protesting too much in itself psychologically suggests that he's got something to hide. But to have BDO saying, well, we are no longer prepared to audit the books of that group actually suggests that there is something fundamentally untoward, so untoward that they are afraid they'll actually be tarnished, and hence they walk away.
What is interesting is during the discussions in the portfolio committee, there was the suggestion from one of the committee members to look at what you can do to deal with AO Technologies and Sekunjalo. And one of the things that was being mulled was liquidating them. But it wasn't clear whether the liquidation was speaking to Sekunjalo as the family trust or Sekunjalo including independent media. Could you give us some clarity on what Ms. Dlamini from the PIC had in mind when she said you are mulling the question of liquidation?
The distinctions are very, very artificial. It is the same group. Whether or not they would have committed to standing guarantor as a group or not, ultimately they are responsible. What Ms. Dlamini was essentially talking about was a loan that was given to Sekunjalo, the media group, way back in 2014.
What was the figure involved?
That one I wouldn't know offhand, but it was not as big as the IO figure of 4.3 billion. But be that as may, both figures do feature, and we're looking after pensioners' money. We're not going to let go of money that was frittered away when it might have been given to Iqbal Survey's group or Sekunjalo group in perhaps good faith. But even that good faith now, upon further scrutiny by the new board, was totally baseless. The money should not, in the first place, have been given to Iqbal Survey.
If you look at the fact that Iqbal Survey is contesting your version, you are saying that the debt has never been serviced. He's saying that a special vehicle was set up for this purposes. Who's telling the truth? Has the debt been serviced? What does the books tell us?
But, you know, special purpose vehicles are the tricks of so many who actually would like to hide things. For us, the truth or the facts will speak for themselves. Lindiwe would not have made the kind of statement that she made had we not actually done our homework and established what the true facts are. We want to believe that our facts are the facts, not so-called alternative facts that others might actually subscribe to.
So can you categorically say, according to your facts, that the debt that was incurred by Dr. Survey through the loan that the PIC gave him has never been serviced?
Well, there's been no service so far. To the best of my knowledge, and Lindiwe would have been closer to the situation because she's executive, and she works with those that should actually be receiving the money if the service was coming through.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned earlier on is the reason why there needs to be such prudence with this money is because, of course, it is the pensions of public servants. But the PSA has slammed you for the behavior towards Sekunjalo, and they've been saying, but what about Steinhoff? When I was doing research for the interview with you, I saw that Mr. Jayendra Naidu did, in fact, appear before the Mpati Commission of Inquiry. Where are we at with Steinhoff, considering that Shamila Batoy also indicated during the week past in Parliament that they are very close to moving on the Steinhoff matter?
I think for anybody to opine that we might be soft to Steinhoff, it's a misreading of the situation. The challenges that you face in dealing with an international company that is registered in the Netherlands but it's actually trading on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, you're dealing with too many moving parts. There's just no way we're going to let go of Steinhoff. We're going to pursue Steinhoff as much as we're going to pursue anybody and everybody else. But one must understand that where Steinhoff is concerned, if you're looking at market cap, that has evaporated, I think, to the tune of 98%. So in order to retrieve anything, you have to look beyond what was the putative market cap and look at underlying assets. And that doesn't come easy. We actually are hard at work trying to establish what assets we could actually reach out for. Mm-hmm. And as I say, you know, it's an international company with multiple areas of operation. We understand we have to go to the Frankfurt Stock Exchange to understand certain aspects. We understand we have to go to the Netherlands, which
and
is
are you in the
domicile.
process of doing that?
Oh, very much so. And there is a law firm based in Europe that is actually assisting us in what you might call a class action, because there are so many the creditors that have been negatively affected. And we were advised that we should go systematically, you know, first try to settle, not by way of liquidation, but by way of seeing if there may be, quote-unquote, some white knight. There's been mention of some white knight who would actually like to come to the rescue because they believe that the shell might be actually useful for them.
Okay.
So we have to exhaust all avenues, but to opine that we're going for Dr. Seve and not going for the others that are actually guilty where the PIC is concerned is actually to misread the situation.
Will Dr. Iqbal Seve potentially face jail time? Will the recommendations be such from the information that you've gotten? And the same with Mr. Marcus Jooste. Would they possibly face any criminal proceedings as a consequence of the investigations? And does that include people like Dr. Dan Machila, who of course was in charge at the PIC and under whose tenure all of this happened?
Suffice it to say that where the PIC of today and the PIC board of today, we shall leave, where we are concerned, we shall leave no stone unturned. But it is not in our power or authority to actually send anybody to jail. We will pursue this to the point where the NPA, the Hawks, would be in a position to actually take over. That job does not rest with us. They are complementary to us in pursuit of justice, in pursuit of fairness to those whose money has been frittered away. Final
question, because I'm going to be speaking to the unions after this. Can you give public servants a guarantee, Dr. Khoza, that their pension monies are safe in the hands of the new board?
Well, certainly. We accepted the job essentially because we saw it as national duty. For some of us, I was semi-retired, but I had to come back almost like conscripted to try and help save the worst in the situation. The average cover for most pension funds worldwide is in the region of 70 to 75%. The Public Investment Corporation, a year ago, the cover was 115%. Today, it is 108%, which means even if all of the pensioners whose money we are looking after claimed that we should actually pay them tomorrow, we would actually pay them and still remain with some surplus. And that's a position that very, very few pension funds could actually claim to have. So there is no question that with the current board regime and the management that would like to keep, to get into position, pensioners' money is very safe.
Dr. Khoza, thank you so very much for making time for joining us here on The Fix. And of course, after this, we will get the response from the Public Servants Association. Don't go anywhere. Now, of course, that was a pre-recorded interview that I have done on Friday. Tahir, Kaya, you represent public servants. Let me start with you, Kaya. You represent the largest public sector union at the moment. Are you satisfied with the work of the Lexham Party Commission of Inquiry, and do you trust that that report that's going to the President is going to bring about the necessary reforms to root out the rot that we saw happening at the PIC?
Well, we're not entirely happy with the work of the Commission in that we feel that there's not much digging that was done in order to get to the bottom of the financial impropriety that took place at the PIC. We're of the view that some people would get off scot-free, and that is happening at the detriment of workers who have their pensions at the PIC. So we want a situation whereby there will be more digging so that the work of the Commission doesn't end now, but there's more digging so that we find out what really happened and we get to the bottom of the rot that took place there. And over and above that, we don't want a situations like at the State Capture Commission where people are not prosecuted or more investigations are taking place. So we want a situation where when the report is presented to the President on the 31st of October, that we put then measures in place in order to ensure that people face punitive measures. Those who are found to have contributed to the financial impropriety face the long arm of the law. And also over and above that, also we want the same vigor that has been used to pursue IO technology and Sekunjalo to be applied to all other people, including Steinhoff, Erin Energy, Tongat, Hewlett, and everyone else, so that we send a strong message that moving forward, we don't want such a situation whereby workers' money are used willy-nilly.
Okay. Tahir, I see you nodding your head. Kaya mentioned some other people that you want to have investigations on as well. Can you just outline from the Public Service Association's point of view who else needs to be investigated in the same way as Steinhoff has been, as AO Technologies and Sekunjalo has been? Which other deals are questionable and that you have information on?
Well, from our point of view, as you would have, Karima, that as the PSA, we are in fact the only union that at least attempted to raid Steinhoff offices successfully, so we managed to get some information from them. As far as the PIC is concerned, the manner in which the whole commission was structured, our view is that it looks like it was meant to target certain individuals. And that's not what we've been calling for. We were calling for outright investigation into all deals that were ever made at the PIC. Those that are listed and those that are unlisted. Because the unlisted investments, that's where most of the money through political connection and business connections really went out. Because those usually people can't see them.
Yes.
It's easier to look at those that are listed with the JSE because of information is available.
Yeah.
But what about unlisted investment? And those also goes into billions. And I'm saying that the commission never went deep enough to try and find out exactly what had transpired there.
Okay. Now, of course, we can talk about the unlisted investments. When this matter was raised in terms of reforming the PIC, the then Finance Minister, Mr. Nene, who resigned very shortly after he admitted to having links with the Guptas, said that it would be unwise to make those public because it would be competition for the PIC because they're the largest investor on the JSE. But I want to park that for the moment. Let's take a look at those we have information on. We've seen now BDO saying they're no longer prepared to audit the books of Sekunjalo. In your view, Kaya, despite the shortcomings, what should be happening with Sekunjalo? They haven't serviced the loan. Dr. Khoza said the division between Sekunjalo as a family trust, AO Technologies, Sekunjalo, who acquired independent media, are artificial, that we're actually dealing with one business. What would you like to see happening there? Should Dr. Survey be servicing that loan? Should he be repaying that loan? Should he be liquidated? What is the view of Nehal?
Our view is that all monies that were given to Dr. Iqbal Sav must be recouped, including the 4.3 billion that was given to IO-Technology, having inflated the value of their shares in the stock market, and the loan that was given to Sekunjalo. All those monies must be recouped. Not only that, from all other people, including the ones Comrade Tahir was saying, the listed and unlisted, all monies must be recouped, because at the end, these monies belong to workers. So no person must go on without paying back the money that they owe. And we want to actually go deeper into the issue of the PIC is saying Dr. Iqbal is not paying, and Dr. Iqbal is saying they are paying. So we want to find out who is telling the truth and who is lying, and someone must face punitive measures based on that, because the money belongs to workers at the end, and it must go back, because workers use this money whenever they retire. Some of them are migrant workers. When they go back home, they will have to sustain themselves up until their last days. So we want all the money recouped, whether it's EOH, Steinhoff, and everyone else. They must bring back the money.
Now, the last question that I asked Dr. Khoza about whether worker pension funds that they invest are in fact safe, and he gave an answer saying that if they were to pay out tomorrow to all public servants, they would be able to make good on it. Do you believe him, Tahir?
Well, currently the asset base of the PIC, they say it's over 2 trillion, but it's not all liquid money. It's invested in assets. So that cannot be, because of, you can't go and sell waterfront today and then get your money back. It doesn't work like that. I have so much respect for Mr. Khoza. However, they just came into this burning pot, and I think they're trying their level best to give or to create a stable environment. It cannot be, because all these people that we see at the PIC, including the legal section of the PIC, were there when these things were happening. The question is that when these things were happening, why were they quiet all the time? And we cannot attribute the mess at the PIC to one man, because of there's a chain reaction to this thing. And we want to know who was involved, what was their contribution, because if a Sekunjalo, for instance, or a technology, there was something wrong with it, there must be a memo that shows that, you know what, according to we didn't support this. This man just went ahead.
But that investigations were done, and we heard people, in fact, at the commission saying precisely what you're saying. What I want to know from you is what reforms at the PIC needs to happen to prevent politicians from using proxies on the PIC to further their own interests.
One of the ways to do that is what we have done now, by making sure that we stop the appointment, for instance, of the deputy minister becoming a chairperson of, automatically the chairperson of the PIC. These kinds of reforms strengthen corporate governance, because of the issue here is corporate governance and ethical conduct. It has completely fallen apart.
I want to stop you there and bring in the issue of ethical and corporate governance. SATU, for example, which is a teachers' union, has a member who serves on the PIC board. So aren't unions as complicit in that chain reaction of how all these dodgy decisions were made, Kaya?
No, not at all. In fact, we need a worker representation in the board. Well, we do have now in the interim, but moving forward, unions need to play an active role to uproot the unethical behavior.
The reasons why I'm asking this about unions, we saw what happened to Mr. George, who was the Secretary General of FEDUSA, Dennis George.
Yes.
He took up the offer of the AO shares, and of course it was found to have been inflated, and his career has ended. So it's not as if unions' hands are clean. FEDUSA is a very large union, Tahir.
No, you must remember, Karima, that the unions only became involved in the PIC only now with under the chairpersonship of Mr. Khoza. And that is why you see things changing there, because we are there. But the fact of the matter is that even the previous board must come and account, because of these things happened under their watch. Yeah. When corporate governance went hayway, they were there. They signed some of those deals.
Okay, we will have a look at that report that is out on the 31st and probably have you back on the show. Tahir Mayepa, Kaya Xaba, thank you so very much for joining joining us here, talking about that all-important report handed to the President coming on the 31st. Up ahead, the much-touted medium-term budget policy statement and the expectations from trade unions as well as civil society. Don't go anywhere.